For our last question, I'll kind of go back to something that Mr. Chandler alluded to earlier in a different question. It's an issue of the Constitution. It seems like the states are ceding their rights to the federal government. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution says, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people." Will you defend states' rights, and please elaborate?
Actually, my record as the Attorney General has been an excellent record of defending states' rights. And I'll tell you a couple of the cases. We have a case that's in the 10th Circuit right now. It's called New Mexico versus U.S. Air. And it has to do with whether or not the state has the authority to regulate the sale of alcohol, including on airplanes. Because you'll remember that U.S. Air actually overserved a fellow named Dana Pabst, I think, and he was involved in an accident and killed a number of people in New Mexico. And U.S. Air is saying, it's not our problem. We know we gave them a lot of alcohol, but we don't want to make anybody mad when they're on our airplanes. And so we are taking a position in New Mexico, and we've taken it to the 10th Circuit. I think it's going to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, that the states have that right to regulate those. So there are 37 other states that have joined us in an amicus brief on that case. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Justice has joined U.S. Air. So you can see where the lines are drawn. We represent the state's interest. The Department of Justice is working against us in New Mexico. There are many cases like that where the Attorney General's office, where we have represented states' rights. And once again, let me explain that a lot of those are through amicus briefs in the court. We had an interesting case here in New Mexico where there was a case out of Utah in the 10th Circuit where there was a discussion about whether they could have crosses on the roadside. New Mexico actually wrote the amicus brief on that, saying that it was with the state of New Mexico has a law that says that you can't tear down crosses that are set up on the roadside. We call them descansos, but you know those little deals out there where people will, if a member of their family has died, they'll put up a cross, candles, different kinds of things like that. We appeared in front of the 10th Circuit to make it clear that the state of New Mexico had the authority to allow those on the side of the road, because it's not the state making religion, it's the state allowing people to exercise their religious beliefs. And so those are the kinds of cases that we're spending a lot of our time on in the courts. And in that case, we actually were successful at getting the 10th Circuit to say that the New Mexico law for descansos was a viable law and was allowable.
Thank you very much. We think we have this one fixed. Mr. Chandler.
I commend my opponent for getting involved in the case versus U.S. Air. The one problem that I see with this is that as Attorney General, you can't nitpick where you're going to protect individuals and stand up for the Constitution and where you're not. It has to be a uniform decision that when the Constitution is being violated and being tread upon, you stand up for the Constitution, whether it's the United States Constitution or the state's Constitution. They want to get involved in the U.S. Air's case. They don't want to get involved in the health care issue. They don't want to get involved in New Mexico's violation of the Constitution, which I believe we are all experiencing today. I went to the poll today and voted, and I saw a write-in candidate's spot, which is a violation of New Mexico's Constitution. Article 5 says that you can, in fact, elect a governor and a lieutenant governor as one unit by one vote. And we have a write-in candidate running for governor without a lieutenant governor candidate. That's a violation of the Constitution as well. Yet, it was Mary Herrera, a high-ranking friend of Gary and my opponent, and so the issue continues forth. We need blind justice in New Mexico. We need an Attorney General that's willing to stand up and defend the Constitution regardless of the issue, whether it's a difficult issue or maybe not so difficult issue, whether it benefits a political party or hurts a political party. This isn't about politics anymore. For far too long, we have had New Mexico attorneys general sitting in that position and sitting in that seat that are concerned about politics and have their eye focused on a higher office or a higher prize. And that's got to stop. We need someone that's focused on protecting New Mexicans and the Constitution every day of the year, regardless of the situation.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Sure. Once again, you can kind of see the difference here that my opponent, who will let you know that he's been a prosecutor for all of his career, is not a constitutional scholar. And there are things that he wants to talk to you about and say, this is a violation of the Constitution because we don't like it. Well, let me tell you something. There are a lot of things that some people don't like that other people do, and it's the Constitution that protects them. And with regard to the ballot, that's actually a really important issue, and you all can see it. The only thing that our decision did is it basically said when you print the ballot in New Mexico, you have to allow a write-in line on the ballot. Now, it's kind of hard for me to understand how having more choices for the voters is unconstitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you can't put a write-in line on the ballot. There is this analysis that because there's a candidate who qualified under the statute in New Mexico to run for governor, the question is, can you keep him from being on the ballot or not? That's a very interesting question. If the voters vote for him and don't vote for a lieutenant governor candidate to go along with it, their vote may not be counted, but it doesn't make the ballot unconstitutional. And so there's more of a political agenda in that than a constitutional analysis.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chandler?
That's my point exactly. There's a political agenda in it. You know, what's interesting is that my opponent says that you can write in a lieutenant. You can't write in a lieutenant governor because the gentleman from Bloomfield doesn't have a running mate. We can't play roulette with the Constitution. We're not prophets. We can't determine who's going to win the governor's race. And heaven forbid, if a candidate won without a lieutenant governor, we would see unprecedented issues in New Mexico's elections that we've never seen before, in one of the most important elections in our time. We can't play games with the Constitution because when we play games, New Mexico loses. The citizens lose. It's black and white. It is a Constitution that is meant to be interpreted by the people, and it's got its literal meanings. And we have to stand up for it. And we don't play politics with it. It's not meant for that. Whether it's a state election or whether it's a federal lawsuit.
Thank you very much.